They say that it's an ill wind that blows nobody any good. This ill wind has blown the dust away, the covering away from a number of fundamental issues, fundamental points about how we run our society, our economy, and so on. Of course, I wish we didn't have the coronavirus in Ohio, where, according to the state officials, 100,000 people are already infected. Of course, I wish that. But it doesn't have throw up the obvious point that if you have a country with no health service, no publicly funded health service, no access to health for the majority, then if something like this comes along, it's not just a drama, it's a crisis. It's a crisis. This moment that we're in demonstrates just how fragile, how insecure people's lives are in the third decade of the 21st century, imagine. That's capitalism's achievement. After 250 years, people are 2 paychecks away from absolute poverty and 1 virus away from mass panic and potentially an attrition of the human race of a kind that we have not seen since the Dark Ages. That's not much of an achievement, you know, after 250 years of capitalism. 2 paychecks away from absolute poverty, 1 virus away from an existential threat to humanity. And therefore, when you think, as Fukuyama did in 1990, that it was the end of civilization, in other words, they had won, capitalism was established as the hegemonic and everlasting way of organizing society, you realize at this moment, 30 years later, how fundamentally untrue that is. Fundamentally untrue. Because, in fact, that which challenges us now, challenges us because of the economic and political system that we live under. What do I mean by that? Well, it's not popular in some circles to say this, but the reason China has defeated coronavirus is precisely because China is a socialist country. That's the truth of the matter. What do I mean? What do I mean by that? Well, only a socialist country with a command economy, with a strong central state and a well-organized government and party could possibly have risen to the challenge so quickly and so comprehensively as the Chinese state has done. Those hospitals that we marveled at, that were being built in 10 days, we're already a decade late with HS2, and it's already £100 billion over budget. China built hospitals in 10 days. And those hospitals have now closed because there's no further need for them. The last nurses from those hospitals left, taking off their masks. Heroes, everyone. They worked day and night, and they beat the coronavirus. In parenthesis, let me say, it's a slight digression, really. But if there's 100,000 cases in Ohio, And if the lateness of recording of those 100,000 cases is repeated across the United States, that means in the state of Ohio alone, there are more coronavirus cases than there ever were in China. And given the lateness of recording, it raises the possibility I say, not that it actually matters all that much unless there's some dark secret of which we are yet unaware. It's perfectly possible, Mr. Trump, that this is not the Wuhan virus or the Chinese virus. It might very well be that the coronavirus arose in the United States of America rather than China. China is sending doctors, kits, equipment, medicine to Iran and to Italy. Iran is being sanctioned by the United States of America, which refuses to make any exception for the coronavirus. It will not lift the sanctions on Iran, even a little bit, to save humanity in Iran. But they're also sending the same things to Italy. Unlike the EU, do you know what the EU sent to Italy this week? This week, when Italian people are singing to each other from their balconies, because they're not allowed to go out and the whole country is locked down, the man from the EU arrived, not with medicine, not with equipment, but with an 80 million euro fine on the Italian government for daring to publicly subsidize their tourist industry in Sardinia. And they're going to be fined €250,000 euros a day until that fine is paid. Look at the difference there. Look at the moral difference. What does China have to do with Italy? Italy is a capitalist country. China is not. China's rushing to the aid of the Italians, and the European Union is hitting them with a big financial stick. I found that morally quite illuminating, actually. Morally quite illuminating. Now, my point is, and you're welcome to argue this point, put your hand up if you want to. I believe that this last few months has shown the superiority of the planned economy, of the centrally controlled economy over the free market economy. I believe that. I didn't myself need the evidence that we've had over the last couple of months, but the evidence is very clearly there. Because have you noticed how in the midst of this crisis, everyone's demanding a socialist solution? Even Donald Trump. Never mind the free market. Never mind Obamacare or Biden care. He needs care. We're going to come to him in a few minutes. Never mind even Bernie Sanders care. We demand free testing. We demand that people who have to stay home get paid. These are socialist demands. And now everybody is making them. Doesn't that demonstrate that actually, far from being extreme, our perspectives are simple common sense, as well as being morally superior? Because if you think about it, if you believe in capitalism, why should you believe in state provision, free testing? Because there's nothing free. If you believe in capitalism, why are you expecting the state to pay for your testing? Why are you expecting the state to keep you alive if you can't go to work? Because that's what capitalism means. The rat race. Well, we say that the rat race is for rats. We're the human race, And we demand a human economy and human politics. That's what we say. We say that everyone must have access to free healthcare of a high quality, free at the point of need. We believe that everyone must work, but that everyone who cannot work must be looked after by those who can work. That's our perspective on economics. Everyone who can work must. We have zero tolerance for unemployment. We don't agree with people fanning around, dropping out, lying on the grass, smoking dope. Sorry. If you believe in that, we're not for you. We believe everyone has to do productive work. But if a virus comes along and knocks you out, or a motor car cuts off your legs, the rest of us have a human responsibility to look after you and to look after your children. That's what being in a society actually means. But if you think about it, our enemies, they believe the entire opposite until an event comes along like this. Now, it's not that the leopard has changed its spots. They don't in their heart believe in it. But they know that in their hearts the people believe in it. They know that if they said, no, we don't agree with this. If you want a test, you'll need to pay for it. If you can't work, you'll need to starve. That's what their system believes. That's what they believe. But they can't afford to say that in this febrile atmosphere. Because if they did, they might be swept out of town, running just in front of the pitchforks. Boris Johnson took a very big risk. He's already running from it. But just a few days ago, it was his perspective on the virus that, well, like Malthus, the devil will just have to take the hindmost, the oldest, the weakest, the poorest, will just have to die. And some of them in their unguarded moments, or they maybe thought they were unguarded, were caught on camera saying, actually that will make our country leaner, fitter. We won't have to carry all these old people. We say these old people are our parents and our grandparents, and we will not allow you to kill them in the interest of what you call leanness and fitness, because that too is a major difference between us and them, isn't it? We believe, if I can, in this great city of Liverpool, paraphrase, like Joe Biden, the unlamented Neil Kinnock, we believe in us, not just in me. We believe in always, and not just in now. We believe in honouring other people's mother and father, cherishing other people's children. That's the difference between us and them. That's the superiority of socialism as a means of organisation, as a means of life. That's what we believe in. And whether it makes us leaner or fitter or not, I'm not prepared to be quiet whilst they kill your parents and your grandparents. Because we believe that we are all in this together. Or at least we ought to be all in this together. So, let me move on to our criticism of where we are at this moment. And it relates to the point I made right at the beginning, which can be characterized as the chickens coming home to roost. We are paying the price for the fact that for not 10 years, not since David Cameron, But since Margaret Thatcher in 1979, we have been systematically underinvesting in the people who work in our health service and in the equipment with which they work and in the buildings with which they work. That's the truth of it. We are not prepared for a devastating existential challenge like this. Unlike China, we are not able to move an army of health service workers. We are not able to test, as they are in China, 1.8 million people a day. We're probably testing a couple of hundred people a day. And only if, because of the shortage of people, personnel, money, equipment, we're testing people only if they have recently come from a heavily infected area like Iran or Italy or China. But in China, everyone is being tested at the rate of 1.8 million every day. We're not able to do that. Our health service was already on its knees before the coronavirus was ever heard of or mentioned. And it was on its knees precisely because Thatcher, Major, Blair, Brown, Cameron, May, and Boris Johnson have starved the National Health Service of the money and the people that they needed. And unless you're sick, or like Dr. Ranji, working in the health service, it's easy not to know that. Unless you've got somebody in hospital, unless you've waited for hours, many hours in an A&E, unless you have visited your elderly mother and found her in a trolley in a corridor, or had to lay your kid down even on the floor of a hospital, you could easily not know that. But now we know. And unless we're very, very lucky, we're going to know much more next week, next month, and 6 months from now. Because this virus may very well cut a swathe through our population, particularly the old, the weak, the vulnerable, the sick, and our health service is simply incapable of rising to that challenge. Not because of the staff of the NHS, who were already heroes and are about to have to be even bigger heroes, but because of the politicians, including those like the Labour ones who pretended they were investing in the National Health Service, but were in fact privatising it and saddling it with debts that are dragging it under through the PFI and the PPP schemes that they came up with. All these, you remember Gordon Brown, the Brown bomber at Chancellor's, he'd pull rabbits out of his hat, he'd announce hospitals here, hospitals there, but he didn't tell you that the method of payment for these hospitals would leave them with fewer beds than the old ones they were replacing, and moreover would fatten the profit of private companies and leave the public services struggling to stand up under the weight of debt incurred through these PFI, PPP schemes. So we are in a very difficult situation. I'm not myself, some people here are, I'm not myself a Leninist. But Lenin was right when he said that there are decades when nothing happens and there are weeks when decades happen. And we may very well be entering into those weeks. And so how is the Labour movement placed to rise to the challenge of those weeks are what lies ahead. If those weeks when people are questioning the way things are and asking, why can't they be otherwise? Why do we have to do things this way? Why can't we do them that way? How is the Labour movement placed? Well, they're about to elect Sir Keir Starmer, a knight of the realm, a multi-millionaire North London baron who is primarily responsible for the tremendous defeat that Labour suffered just a couple of months ago in the December general election. What could possibly go wrong? Let's pick the guy that picked the policy that destroyed us at the polls just 3 months ago, and let's pick him with a landslide victory. How? Because the so-called left, for reasons of identity politics, insisted on having only one candidate, and that candidate, however weak or poor, has to be a woman. I know some of you don't like to hear this, but that's why we are where we are. If Ian Lavery had been the left candidate, or even Richard Bergen, either of those would have won the Labour leadership. But the left insisted on putting up, I'm sorry, Jyoti, putting up a schoolgirl who looks like a schoolgirl, sounds like a schoolgirl, has the political record of a schoolgirl. I'm sorry, for me that's what Rebecca Long-Bailey is. She's an apprentice, not a leader. But they insisted it had to be her, could only be her. Why? Because she's a woman. Lavery should have self-identified as a woman, and he would have swept the board. He would have swept the victory. And he could have got changed in the women's changing room in Marks and Spencer. Marks and Spencer's would have issued an apology if he had any unkind remarks about his less than feminine figure. You see where I'm going here? This is the madness of what passes for left in Britain today and for some years past. As Jyoti put it brilliantly at a meeting we did together for Julian Assange the other night, while we're all fighting about what words we can use, what pronouns we can use to address each other with, we're going down to historic landslide defeat. Tony Blair is back. Keir Starmer is Tony Blair. If Tony Blair, forgive me Tony, had an illegitimate son, it's Keir Starmer. Although, somewhere along the way, he lost the laughs. He lost the polish. Keir Starmer is Tony Blair without the laughs. He's Tony Blair without the eloquence. Tony Blair could sell ice to the Eskimos, coals in Newcastle, sand to the Arabs. In fact, he is selling a lot of sand to the Arabs. He's getting millions of pounds a year from the kings of Saudi Arabia. Would you buy a used car off Keir Starmer? Not that he knows what a used car is. He's never seen a used car. He doesn't know what that means. Keir Starmer is about to win a sweeping victory because Rebecca Long-Bailey is the so-called left-wing candidate. And I'll come back to what that means for the Workers' Party in just a few minutes. Because even more uncomfortably, we have to confront why there's a leadership challenge at all. Why there's a leadership election. Why was the election lost in December? After all, Labour finally had a left-wing leader, a manifesto which was not nearly as left-wing as the ones I used to fight in the 1970s under those great Bolsheviks, Harold Wilson and James Callaghan. But in recent times, it was a left-wing manifesto, right? Why did it lose? We have to confront this, and I mean nothing personal. I was a close friend of Jeremy Corbyn for many decades. And I acknowledge and respect the effort that he put into the campaigns and so on. But we're in this situation because Jeremy Corbyn made 3 fundamental errors. Absolutely fundamental errors that made impossible his victory in December. The first of them, in no particular order of importance, because all of them are important. The first of them was the failure to stand up to the foul lie that supporting the Palestinian people, opposing the state of Israel, had anything whatsoever to do with anti-Semitism, the hatred and fear of Jews. And it's not that I didn't so advise him. From the first moment before he became the leader, indeed the night that the woman reporter, I forget her name, on Channel 4 News, bearded him outside the Conway Hall in Red Lion Square in London and put him through the mill over things he'd said, people he'd met, and so on in the past during his honourable decades of support for the Palestinian people. I sensed that he felt ambushed and that he hadn't handled the questions well. So I conveyed to him this simple point, which I learned on the streets of Glasgow. If you don't run, they can't chase you. If you don't run away, they can't run after you. You have to stand firm on principle. If you are a principled person, and he was. But not just out of principle. I pointed out that everything you have ever said on this question, they've already got it on video. And if you now say that such and such a phrase is unacceptable, such and such an idea is somehow now beyond the pale, they've got a video of you saying exactly that. I know that because I've been on 500 platforms with you on which you have said it. Let me give you an example. It is now an expellable offence in Labour to describe Israel as a racist apartheid state. But it is a racist apartheid state. You cannot make it. You cannot make it a crime to tell the truth. At least if you're on 500 videos saying exactly that, as Corbyn is. The second fundamental mistake that he made, to throw away his deep ideological objection to the neoliberal capitalist club of the European Union. To throw it away and pretend that something had changed. You see, some of them did genuinely believe. The trade union leaders, for example, they believed that Jacques Delors, remember him, still alive by the way, in 95, that Jacques Delors was now their last defender. They were no longer capable of defending themselves. They decided that early. It's quite a comfortable decision, really. If you tell your members there's actually nothing I can do for you, but keep paying, we'll become a travel service, insurance service, discounts, kind of co-op. But we can no longer defend you. And you have a government under Thatcher that will definitely not defend you. Therefore, we depend on the EU to defend us. I understand that argument. I never accepted it. But Delors, the reason I know that he's still alive, as I once said, Delors is a long time dead. He's not. But the politics of Jacques Delors are a long time dead. The EU doesn't pretend, as Jacques Delors did, that it's on the side of the people and the workers. Tell that to the workers of the European Union. Tell that to the workers of Hale Wood. Tell that to the workers of England, Scotland, Wales. All the devastating blows that we've taken, we took whilst we were in the EU. And there are some people here not that much younger than me. When we joined the EU, we had a coal industry, a steel industry, a car industry, a bus industry, a truck industry, a motorcycle industry, a railway workshops industry, a steel industry. We had an industrial base in this country when we joined the EU. And now that we've just left it, we don't have any of these things any longer. So Jacques Delors didn't do much of a job defending or protecting us. But even if you were one of those people, Jeremy Corbyn was not. Jeremy Corbyn sat with me in Parliament overnight, night after night after night, trying to wreck the Maastricht Treaty, trying to block the Lisbon Treaty, demanding a referendum on whether or not we accepted the Lisbon Treaty. Corbyn was not one of those Delorists. He opposed all these things as vehemently as me, as Skinner, as Mr. Benn. So if you're going around as Mr. Authenticity, I say what I mean and I mean what I say, how do you explain that you now give the EU post-Maastricht, post-Lisbon, 7.5 out of 10 and demand that the British people vote for it? That's a very big and profound mistake, because there are some people who change their politics. I never have, but I recognize that it happens. But if you change your politics, you have an obligation to explain why you were wrong then and right now. But that was never done. Even more extraordinarily, Jeremy Corbyn was never a Trotskyite. But John MacDonald, I knew when he was a leading Trotskyite. Trust me. Don't worry, John, I'm not going to give away at this stage too many of your secrets. I'm saving that for my memoirs. But how does John MacDonald become a Remainer? How is that possible? That someone trained in Marxism, Leninism, and who has claimed in the past with justification to be a raving Trotskyite, how can he be a supporter of the European Union? The truth is, neither of them were supporters of the European Union. They were running away from the third of the fundamental reasons why we are now where we are. Corbyn had the power to crush the Blairite ramp inside the Parliamentary Labour Party, but instead decided to capitulate, to appease, and eventually to surrender to them. And that's why we're in the mess that we are in now. Otherwise, I couldn't restrain myself today. I saw a tweet from Jeremy congratulating John Ashworth on finally, I'd forgotten Labour had a health spokesman, to be honest. In all this coronavirus, he should have been on the TV every night with a distinctive point of view, but I thought he'd self-isolated. But Corbyn issued a tweet this morning praising the pronunciamento of somebody called John Ashworth, who apparently, it turns out, is Labour's health spokesman. I had to reply, but what is he saying on the phone to Tories behind your back? Because the last time I saw the words John Ashworth was on the front page of the Mail on Sunday during the election campaign, in which a full transcript of Jeremy Corbyn's health spokesman was helpfully provided. And in that transcript, Ashworth said what he really thought about Jeremy Corbyn. And in case Jeremy's watching, I'll not adumbrate all of the foul insults and contempt contained therein, because I'm just making a point. If you're the leader of a party and you pick as your lieutenants all the people that have tried so hard to destroy you, what do you expect is going to happen? If you say to those people, actually, if you push hard enough on my son's walking up, if you push hard enough on all the things that I reject, if you attack strongly enough all the things I believe in, I won't sack you, I'll capitulate to you. Your policies will become my policies. Trident, £100 billion for a useless pile of American-owned and controlled nuclear junk? Yes, I'll take it. I'll have it. NATO, against which I've spent decades on the streets, yes, I'll take it. We'll stay in NATO. We'll bring in Trident. We'll back the EU. We will not expel Tony Blair. We'll say, come back, all is forgiven. John McDonnell, being interviewed by Alistair Campbell, the Goebbels of Tony Blair, said, there on video, John, first question, Mr. McDonnell, is Tony Blair a war criminal? Ha ha ha, of course not, says John McDonnell. The same John McDonnell who stood with us on all these demonstrations denouncing the same Tony Blair as a war criminal. How does this compute? It computes this way. McDonnell and Abbott and Blair and Corbyn all decided, if you can't beat them, join them. If you can't beat them, capitulate to them. But keep wearing your CND badges. Keep wearing your regalia from past conflicts and controversies. These three fundamental mistakes are the reason we are where we are. I'll give you just two pieces of evidence in support of that. Half the people in this country think that Labour is anti-Semitic. Half. That's because Labour never explained what anti-Semitic is. That's because Labour, instead of gathering those wonderful and significant numbers of socialist Jews around them and said, no, 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 anti-Semitism is hatred of Jews. Hating Netanyahu is not hating Jews. In fact, being Jewish is the only good thing about Netanyahu. He is otherwise a killer, a murderer, a torturer, a war criminal. And of course the Red Wall was demolished more than by any other matter by the juggernaut of Labour's volte-face turnaround on the subject of the 2016 EU referendum. If Corbyn had said to Emily Thornberry, to Keir Starmer, to all these other Blairites, no, no, the policy is that we accept the decision of the referendum. We will, of course, build a different Brexit, a Labour Brexit, a working class Brexit, but Brexit we must, because that's what the people voted for. If Corbyn had said that, and he'd said to them, if you don't like it, there's the door, don't let it hit your big arse on the way out. If he'd said that to them, we would not have been in the situation that we are now. So I said I'd come back to how all this requires a workers' party. And so I now shall. Every country needs a workers' party. Every country needs a party that stands up for the workers, whose interests are entire and separate from the interests of the rulers, the owners. That's the basis. That's how the Labour Party came to be. The Liberals wanted to be the voice of the workers and the owners. And Keir Hardie, a bearded Scotsman, you didn't get that, did you? I don't sound enough like a Scotsman anymore. Keir Hardie said that no party can serve two masters. No party can represent the owners and the men and the women. That's not possible. Because the interests of the men and the women, the workers, are different and usually diametrically opposite to the interests of the owner. Think about it. The owner wants you to work longer and harder for less. The worker wants to work for more, for less time. And if possible, not quite as hard. That's what the workers want. But the owner wants something completely opposite. So how can a party represent the interests of both? And that's how the Labour Party came to be. Every country needs a party for the workers. A party for the workers now too old to work. A party for the children of the workers who will one day become workers. And that's what, under Sir Keir Starmer, Britain will not have. It might still call itself Labour, but don't rule out a change of name. Remember, I said it here. But by any objective standard, Keir Starmer's Labour Party will not be a party for the workers. We will have to build the Workers' Party of Britain to stand up for the working people. But there are other, less easy issues that have to be grasped, and we don't shirk from them. You see, we've all got different identities. My middle son supports Liverpool. My eldest son and my youngest son, like their father, support Manchester United. I've lost you.
You were doing well then.
Some of us are Catholics, thank God. Others are Protestants. It's a shame. Some are black, some are white, some are gay, some are straight, some are somewhere in between. We don't give a toss what you are. We want to unite all the working class people of this country, whatever their orientation, their colour, their religion, where they came from. Because we believe that class is the one thing that unites us. And if we go down the rabbit hole that Labour has gone down, of expelling prominent feminist leaders, calling them transphobic, of allowing men who self-identify as women to be on all women's shortlists, to demanding the right of Ian Lavery dressed up to go into the women's changing room and Marks and Spencer's, all you're doing is dividing the working class. Because most working class people think that is all completely bonkers. I happen to think they're right. I happen to think they're right. But even if you don't think they're right, that's not the point. The point is, if we spend the next X years fighting about these identity politics things, not only will we never move forward, we'll keep moving back. We'll become weaker and weaker and weaker before we disappear up our own fundament. That's what will happen to the Labour movement. That's what will happen to the idea of socialism. Now, that's one of our characteristics. One is Brexit. You don't have to have been a Brexit supporter to be in the Workers' Party, but you have to accept that we've Brexited. You have to accept that we're out of the European Union for good or ill, and that the future lies and is to be fought for on the basis of Britain's withdrawal from the EU. If you want to rejoin the EU, good luck. Join the Liberal Democrats. Don't join the Workers' Party of Britain. If you think that colour, religion, sexual orientation is as important or more important than class, we're not the party for you. You will never hear us talking about sectional interests and demands on these matters. We will do everything that we can to unite the broadest number of working class people behind our banner. And that means that sometimes they'll use language that isn't the language that you've been used to in the last 30 years in the Labour movement. Well, tough. Because that's not what matters. What matters is that they're behind the banner. What matters is that they're on the march, that they're on strike, that they are confronting the power in the country, in the world. That's what matters. Not whether they make a mistake on pronouns, not whether they've quite grasped some of the nuances of woke political thinking that other people on the left have grasped. Now, most of you are either in or have been in the trade unions. And if you can think back far enough to the days when we were strong, that was axiomatic, wasn't it? If you were going out on strike, you didn't ask the guy next to you what his view was on homosexuals or feminism. All that mattered was he was ready to stand next to you and fight the owner, fight the boss, fight for more money, better standards, better conditions. That's what matters. See the point I'm getting at here? That's what counts. The rest is frippery in my view, but even if it isn't in your view, put it to one side. Our characteristic is that we want to build a socialist society. That means we accept, as Marx said, that under capitalism, all that is sacred will be profaned. All that is solid will melt into air. Marx predicted that in 1848 at the age of 29 or 30. And it rings out around the world today. All that is sacred to us is profaned, isn't it? I'm not just talking about religion. I happen to be a believer. Many are not. But I'm talking about human relations, families, society, the idea of community. All these sacred things are profaned, including love of one's country, by the way. Another thing that some woke leftists finding uncomfortable. Somebody wrote to me the other day, I was telling Paul, you'll never get anywhere if you're calling yourselves the Workers' Party of Great Britain. I said, well, actually, we're not called the Workers' Party of Great Britain. We're called the Workers' Party of Britain because we believe in Irish freedom and we want to eliminate any complication or confusion on that point. But we are the Workers' Party of Britain. That happens to be where we live. Wherever we came from. Whatever colour we are, however we pray, that's what our country is called. And if you call yourself a leftist, but you're going around telling everyone else that you hate your own country, you can't even speak its name, then forget about the idea of anyone ever marching behind you or voting for you. This is an important difference between us and others. All that is sacred is profaned. As it happens, Paul and I were just talking yesterday about all the great people, great writers, scientists, inventors, heroes of all kinds that we have produced on this little island. We intend to celebrate them. They are Great Britons. We refuse to resile from the achievements of our people. Neither will we hold back in any way from our condemnation of the crimes of our ruling class against our people and the peoples of the world. My son, where is he? Zane asked me today, is it true that the British and the Germans in the First World War on Christmas Day stopped fighting, put a ball in the middle of the two trenches and had a game of football? And it is true. It happened. And the officers cut it short. Why? They cut it short because it might have begun to dawn on both teams that actually they had much more in common with each other than they did with the donkeys that were sending them to their death in the trenches. And they might have stopped fighting, turned around, shot their generals, marched on their capitals, overthrown their kings. That's what they should have done. That's what we would have been advocating for them to do. That doesn't mean we hate Britain. Do you get me? That doesn't mean that we hate our country. On the contrary, it's because we love our country and our countrymen and women that we wish to exalt them and we wish to lead them to their liberation from a political and economic system that oppresses them and stops them from achieving the true greatness for which they can, if encouraged and led begin to reach. We believe that this is not all there is. We think that this moment that we are in may very well open up political questions, political possibilities that seemed ridiculous even a few weeks ago. For example, the GMB, not an organisation I normally pray in aid, not Piers Morgan, the General Municipal and Boilermakers Union. Though I'm so old, I remember them in 5 different titles. But the demand that they have raised yesterday is completely correct, and Labour should have raised it. Requisition the beds in all private hospitals so that if we need to use them for the coronavirus, we will use them. Other questions will arise, could arise. I'm not saying will, but could arise. If the government's mishandling of this crisis becomes so sharp that our people are dying in large numbers, the Trade Union Congress needs to get off its arse and organise a general strike of all workers until this government is brought down in place. Now, I would have seemed like an Egypt calling for a general strike a fortnight ago. But you see, I'm not sounding like an Egypt calling for it today. And in 2 weeks' time, 1 month's time, it may very well be that everybody is calling for a general strike to bring this government down. I could go on. I think you already guessed that. But I've probably spoken for long enough, and now it's your turn. But I want to conclude with this. I used to say it during the war. The Iraq War, of course. I'm not as old as I look. I used to say this during the Iraq War. I didn't come here to entertain you. I hope it was entertaining, but I didn't come here all this way to entertain you. I came here to recruit you. Willie Gallagher, the great Clydeside MP, on the red Clydeside, he used to open his meetings by saying, "Comrades and friends," and I hope by the end of the meeting I don't have any friends left. That sometimes happens to me, but he meant that by the end of the meeting everyone would be a comrade. That's what we are trying to do. We want to build the Workers' Party of Britain here in Liverpool, in Merseyside, in the northwest of England. I hope I've recruited you for that purpose here today. Thanks very much indeed.